Welcome to Lynn University's continuing webinar series. Today we're going to talk about the future of hospitality and tourism. My name is Bruce Himmelstein. I'm going to moderate today's discussion, and pretty excited to introduce to you, or have the following folks introduce themselves to you, all alumni of Lynn University through the hospitality program, which is pretty exciting. Let's start with Dave Berger. Dave, if you don't mind giving us a little bit about yourself. Dave's obviously the Chief Operating Officer of Hospitality America, and Dave would love to hear a little bit about you.
Sure. A Lynn University graduate, 1998, went through the hospitality program. Laid my roots in South Florida for many years in the hotel business, select service, full service, Marriott, Hilton, Choice. Some big companies in South Florida, including Turnberry Associates, Thayer Lodging. Was given an opportunity in 2013 to move to South Carolina, become Chief Operating Officer of a third-party management company, Hospitality America, founded in Brentwood, Tennessee. And we've got 16 assets across the Southeast, as north as Roanoke, Virginia, as south as Miami, Florida, and as west as Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, every day we've got $500 million in assets. We've got 800 employees. So it'll be, it's always exciting to talk about our business. But over the last 90 days, obviously that whole path has changed, and we've had to pivot in a lot of different ways. So it's a good opportunity to reflect back and talk and take some questions. But we've come a long way since COVID introduced itself to the industry back at the beginning of March. So where we sit today, it's pretty amazing what we've been through, and we're still standing, which is great.
Well, thanks, David. I know we have a lot to talk about. You've got a great lens on this right now, so we'll circle back to you in a moment.
Sure.
Let's go to the next slide, and I believe coming up next, we've got Howard Copen, who graduated in 10 from Lynn, who's the Executive Director of Revenue Management at an amazing hotel. I was fortunate enough to have dinner there not too long ago, the Encore at Boston Harbor. Howard, welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. I graduated from Lynn's graduate program with an MBA specialization in hospitality and marketing in 2010. I've been in gaming casinos for about 12 years, worked all over the country, a few different companies, including Boyd Gaming, and prior to that, Pinnacle Entertainment. I also have worked for Duetto Research, which was a tech company that helped design revenue management software.
Great. Thank you, Howard. Look forward to talking to you about revenue management in just a moment. Next slide, please. And Darin, who graduate of 08 and 10. We'll have to hear more about that, Darin. Resort Director of Sales for Disney Meetings and Events. You've got some, I think you guys are opening pretty soon, Darin, right?
That's right. Yeah, July 11th, Walt Disney World will open 2 of our parks, and then July 15th, the other 2 will open. But just a little about me. I've been in the hospitality business since I was 13, working in restaurants, and the past 15 years in luxury and upper upscale resorts in Florida. And the past year and a half, I've worked for the Walt Disney Company at Walt Disney World, overseeing our resort sales.
Well, thanks, Darin. The 3 of you have such, you represented such great brands that this will be very interesting for the students and alumni listening in to hear your journey and kind of what your challenges are today. So if we could hit the next slide, I believe we have one of the questions teed up. This is, this is, we could do an hour just on this question, but let me start with you, Dave. You alluded a little bit to it, what the new normal is. And I think this gets redefined every day. And I'm not sure that people understand the business model of ownership versus the brands. And maybe if you just took a second to talk about the distinction, that may help segue to answer this question of what's the new normal for us.
Sure. So as a franchisee, we operate through Hilton and Marriott as a licensee of the brands. So what you'll get from a a hotel company like a Marriott and a Hilton is they're going to help you from a standpoint of top line revenue, and they're going to generate business through their GDS to your front door. And that's how you pay your royalties and your franchise fees. But as far as your profitability, you know, that's the responsibility of the management company or the owner, is to drive that profitability down to the bottom line with the revenue and the business that the brands are bringing in. You know, the new normal for us in the COVID world is, you know, profitability is gone, but survival is at the forefront every day. So the new normal is the micromanagement of FTEs, which is the acronym for full-time equivalents, is we have to micromanage our labor on a daily basis. We have to micromanage all of our expenses daily. We have worked with banks on a weekly basis, updating loans. With all these hotels have mortgages like you would on a home. They all have commercial mortgages. The mortgages are very different in dynamics, as far as some are commercial loans, some are local loans with local banks. But the new normal is we're on the phones with bankers every week, giving them forecasted updates and shortfalls of cash. So our new normal is, you know, as a portfolio in April, our portfolio lost just under $1 million of you know, we've lost. So the new normal every day is really measuring where we're leaking and asking for deferrals in every way possible, while trying to generate top line revenue, which really is non-existent right now from a corporate standpoint. So we're really working in these drive markets. But the answer is, the new normal is we're not getting any business from the distribution channels that we normally do and we pay our franchise fees for. So we're having to really create our own top line revenue as well, because we're just not getting anything from the brands.
Right.
Anything of significance.
Yeah, and you know, as I mentioned on the tee up, I think, you know, this gets redefined almost by a weekly, monthly basis. So I know I could circle back with you even 2 weeks from now, and the answer might be a little different based on what's happening. Darin, I'm going to slide to you for a second. You know, for those of Lynn students and alumni listening, I'm sure they know that there's 3 basic segments in a hotel: leisure travel, business travel, and groups and meetings. And clearly, the groups and meetings segment has been hit pretty hard based on, you know, gathering in ballrooms and travel on airplanes. So what has that done, Darin, to Disney and in the meetings segment of what you're dealing with right now?
Sure. You know, I think we're going to have to pivot in a big way. If you have a hotel that's 70% relying on group business, well, that might now go to 20 or 30%. So how do you fill that additional percentage to get back up in the most profitable way, as David was talking about? So now we need to find other segments to fill group, you know, because if I have a 1,000-person ballroom and I can only put 500 people in it now, that's going to take my group rooms down. So I'm going to need leisure and other segments to fill that in. So the marketing plans now, you know, whatever you had in 2020, forget about it. Now we have to pivot and basically come up with a new marketing plan on how we're going to fix 20 as best as possible. As you know, we've been out for 5 months. So how do you make up 5 months of billions of lost revenue? And then what does the future look like, 2021 and beyond, for keeping that business on the books and driving revenue in the future years?
So Darin, let me just follow up on that, because, you know, seasonality plays a big role in your business, especially. Does the drive market start to get redefined, especially in the group side?
I think so. I think people are going to be leery to get on a plane, and, you know, our feeder markets of New York and Texas and some of those areas, people might be getting in their cars, especially with the price of gas right now. In fact, I drove to South Carolina recently and I paid $1.60 pretty much the whole way of the trip, and it costs hardly anything to go from Orlando to there and back. So I think a lot of people are going to be getting in their cars versus getting on a plane. yeah, we're going to need to focus on the drive market, annual pass holders, repeat customers that we can rely on to come back.
Right. So, you had mentioned the marketing plan is going to have to get redefined, and certainly I'm not even sure one writes an annual marketing plan anymore. I think you look at quarter by quarter and see what the opportunities are. But,
Yep.
Classic segmentation in a marketing plan is your association business, your, state and regional, your corporate business, your fraternal, that stuff. Do you see new segments coming out of this that you guys are talking about?
Well, I think, the areas of the country and the world that are still doing well, like healthcare, obviously.
Yeah.
How do continuing medical education meetings happen? Because those folks need to get their credits.
Right.
So those are going to have to happen. So I think there's some certain areas that we would focus on more than others, healthcare being a big one, probably some manufacturing, things like that. But yeah, we're going to have to redefine group, I would think, as well.
Right.
And maybe search for, if we're used to having a lot of association, we're used to having a lot of corporate, whatever the mix is, that might need to be defined as well.
Right. So, Howard, let me slide over to you for a moment. In growing up in the business, revenue management was a fairly a simple discipline within hospitality. You had two restrictions, MS1 and MS3, and that was it. And if there was a discipline that has evolved with science and data to drive decision-making within the profit pressure that Dave talked about earlier, it's revenue management. So what does COVID do to analysis as you try to yield the best possible combination of rooms in a hotel every 24 hours? What has the COVID done to how you analyze that?
Right. To start off with and just address the question, Bruce, the new norm is you throw out our benchmarking. You throw out all the previous data that you had that I rely on day to day. I look at Friday over Friday, year over year, every kind of metric you've ever had in the past, it's gone. For me, in my new role here at Encore Boston Harbor, we're a brand new hotel, $2.5 billion hotel with 671 rooms. Opened June 23rd, so we haven't even been open a year, and all of that data is gone, right? So now we've got to look more when we reopen. We've got to look at our pace of since we've reopened, how many groups are rebooking, weddings rebooking, where are they going, what months are they looking at, and provide promotions to casino customers that are sensitive of the current environment. In Massachusetts, COVID hit us pretty hard. I think at one point we were actually the third state hit the hardest. So how we speak to our customers is going to be a little bit more sensitive. And when they're booking, again, back to the question of the new norm, the cancellation policies are going to be more flexible and more sensitive, I think, throughout the industry. And so, when you booked a non-refundable reservation before, there were almost no excuses. You booked it, we kept it, and kind of viewed it as profit. I think now we're going to ease up and look at that a little bit differently throughout the industry.
So just to follow up on that, Howard, is the fact that your hotel casino is in a bit of a nice drive market, does that benefit you coming out of this?
Absolutely. I think to your point, the drive time is a little bit further. I think, people were considering 4-hour flights before, and now that's a 12-hour to 14-hour drive time. And I think that's an appealing drive time for a luxury resort. So in Boston, we can go, almost to DC, well, definitely through DC and parts of Virginia, Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore. There's about 45 million people in a 2-3 hour drive time.
And Howard, who typically sits in a sales strategy meeting with you? What positions in the hotel are sitting with you making these decisions on revenue management?
We have our president, and I know your friend, Bruce, but we've got director of sales, director of brand and advertising to ensure that it makes sense, and VP of marketing, and we have some casino hosts as well as the director of hotel. So it's about 20, 30 people in a revenue meeting now.
Yeah.
And we're focused on all the various segments on what we're doing. And yeah, what I considered revenue management when I started, to me it was like Tetris. It was always about getting the the most profitable people in a room. And if there was no demand in one area, who can I fill it with? What other segment of business can I fill it with? And making sure the hotel was as full as possible, because that leads to food and beverage ancillary spend, spa and salon ancillary spend, and gaming, the casino environment ancillary spend.
Yeah. Thanks. I appreciate it, Howard. Hey, Dave, let me circle back to you for a moment as a follow-up. Is there a different filter now, or a set of filters that Hospitality America will use moving forward on doing deals based on the new normal?
Yeah, for sure. We we were getting to a point in our industry where markets were starting to become full, and what I believe to be irresponsible deals were getting done in markets that couldn't justify what the pro forma numbers were written to give to the banks. The ADR and occupancy was not realistic. For us, we're going to be looking at areas now that have high barrier to entry, and the filters as far as being able to do a deal now. I think you're going to weed out a lot of the players in our industry that won't be able to get financed. So, yeah, I think as we look at the markets, we're going to be really careful on the feasibility studies and the pipelines, not knowing fully the pipelines now as that materializes in the next 6 months to a year, is what deals end up getting done in certain markets. Mm-hmm. And then trying to understand if those markets rebound to where 2018, 2019 was, you could have demolished the entire pipeline in the market based on COVID-19. And then if you're a company that has the ability to raise capital and has the brand relationships, you strike with the best brand and the best location in the market. But we are going to be very strategic where we go moving forward. Yeah, that's interesting. Thanks, Dave. I appreciate that insight. My friends at Lynn, let's move on to the next slide. And well, I think we've covered that, so I'm gonna move on to the next one. How will your market segmentation be different? We touched a little bit on that with Darin, but Howard, do you see in Encore, and perhaps speaking for other resort casinos in the country, how segmentation might be different, not only within the leisure segment, but the group segment within the hotel?
Absolutely. Just speaking quite frankly, here in Boston and other states, the laws are going to be a little bit different on how we can reopen. I think they're considering a mass gathering of more than 10 people here in Massachusetts, and that's what I've heard in other parts of the country as well. So if you look at group business, when previously they might have filled 300, 400 rooms and had 600 to 800 people associated with a large group or convention, if that's down to 10 people or 10 people, that's might be 10 hotel rooms. I've got a lot more rooms to fill, and that's going to be similar across the country at resorts and people that were really dealing with a lot of large conventions and group business. So what that becomes available is, who else do we market to? Do we want to lower our prices to fill to more people, so they can experience our resort? Or do we, and Dave, I'm going to steal from you a little bit. Do we look at our FTEs and we see how many people are working, and are we more profitable with less people working? And that's what appeals to me about revenue management, and it always has, is we look at these analysis and we consider shutting down hotel towers in some areas from a revenue management perspective. If do we open certain days of a week, and how much is it really costing us, and what areas can we make the most profit? So I think we just need to be really conscious of our brands, of what we represent, and really be concerned on how it comes off to the customer, because you don't want to look cheap. You don't want to not have a front desk staff because now you have, keys to the room on your phone and you're contactless, right? You want to be able to touch every customer in a similar way, and just be mindful of the pandemic that's out there.
Yeah. Dave, what about within your portfolio? Are you guys starting to have discussions about marketing plans and how segmentation is going to look different moving forward, even starting with next year's plan?
Absolutely. Specifically in markets that we know we have a cool downtown feel with restaurants and hotels. And so the new norm might be getting away in a car for 2-3 hours just so somebody can have a normal dinner, walk the streets, be out. So we are starting social media campaigns. We're going to do some geo marketing and target specifically. So for example, in Greenville, South Carolina, where I'm based, we are now targeting Western North Carolina because they are phases behind us. So we have ads popping up on social media. Hey, Greenville's open just to have a dinner and get away for the night. So from a marketing standpoint, we will shift dollars to targeted strategic marketing in drive markets of North Georgia and Western North Carolina. For Greenville.
So Dave, do the brands, as a significant portfolio operator, as you guys are, do you stimulate those discussions with the brands to go, hey, what are your plans, brands, so we know what to pull down from?
So we've asked a lot of the questions. Unfortunately, 70 to 80% of Hilton and Marriott have been furloughed. They're corporate people. I am documenting all of my requests, the lag time on some. They're in a tough spot right now as well. They have a revenue management team that a franchisee can hire. We do all of our revenue management in-house, but we've asked for some specific email distribution that we'd like to get out. We'd like to get in front of our Hilton Honor Diamond, our Gold, that have stayed with us in the past year. It's a pay-to-play initiative, and that we've been doing. But as far as just long-term strategies over the next 6 to 12 months, we've been unsuccessful so far.
You and I can talk offline about that. Darin, you had alluded to it, so I wanted to give you a chance to answer if there was any other blank you wanted to fill in about market segmentation. We talked about you specifically the group lens, but in discussions with some of your other colleagues within Disney, are there other segmentation shifts that you think will be occurring?
Well, I think David just made a good point about getting really granular with how you're looking at your audience. Some cities are open, some cities are not open, different restrictions, different capacities. Some, people from New York flying into Florida need to go on a 14-day quarantine. So I think you really need to look at all of those items as you're laying out the landscape of the marketing plan as to who you're going to go after, leisure and group, because everybody has these different kinds of restrictions in different states and cities. Right. So it's really as I mentioned before, a large pivot and really a deep dive into how to be most effective in the short term and then plan for the long term as well.
So think about this, guys. In some of these markets we operate in, these university, SEC, ACC markets, football for our portfolio, college football in the fall, is probably a top line generator of $6 to $7 million as a portfolio. And so we are planning as that we will not have that revenue or not even a fraction of it, but that's really our fall in a lot of these markets. So we have inflated bookings right now of people that know they can cancel, but still we basically have a lot of revenue on the books, but we don't think it'll come to fruition. College football in a lot of these markets is really important to us.
Yeah.
That segmentation we feel will be void of in the fall.
That's a tough deal. There's no question, because that's such a chunk of revenue that you're just not going to replace with another segment. There's no trade-off there.
Nope.
Yeah. Ladies, if we could go to the next slide. So this was the one that I was actually the most anxious to ask you, which is, we've got a lot of students and actually some alumni listening in, watching in of the future of the hospitality industry. And before I ask you guys to respond, I'm going to ask you to tell us, each of you, and let's start with Howard. When you graduated, Lynn, what was your first job after you graduated?
I actually went to work at resorts in Atlantic City. I went to Lynn for the graduate program. So I had some previous experience working for Pinnacle Entertainment, and then I went to work at it's the oldest casino outside of Las Vegas. It's in New Jersey, and it's a building from the 1920s. It was 2010, which was not a great time, and it was a bankrupt casino. And we brought it back with Margaritaville and kind of did some rebranding. But you wind up wearing a lot more hats and doing a lot more in time when you're needed. And I think it's good to have that lens to say, I'm not an expert, but I'm willing to do this. I'm willing to own this experience and learn from it. And learn about yourself too. Learn about what areas you liked or didn't like. I started in Pinnacle. I started in planning and analysis and never managed a staff. And my boss picked up on that and said, you go manage housekeeping. They could use some help there. And I wound up managing a staff of, 200 people. It was a 995 room property in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And, I wound up realizing, I don't really like managing people. I like the strategizing and those kind of things. So I think you wind up wearing a lot of hats, volunteering, making yourself part of a team, and learning what you like and what you don't like. And that's really an important part of life.
Yeah, no question. Thanks, Howard. Darin, what was your first job out of school?
I was already working at the Boca Raton Resort and Club as assistant convention center manager, setting up meeting space with tables and chairs.
Yeah, my first job was a housekeeper out of college because I couldn't find anything that I wanted to do. So I decided that I needed to make money. So I made beds, and it seemed to work out. Dave, what was your first job out of school?
I was a night manager at the Clarion Lauderdale Beach Resort in Lauderdale by the Sea that had just converted from a Howard Johnson's to a Clarion. And Clarion Choice at the time required the hotel, because it was a resort hotel, to have a manager on duty. And so I would check in at 9 o'clock on Friday, and I would check out on Sunday after dinner. And, we had a lot of activities outside and events, and I was the executives went home on the weekend, and I was the face of the hotel at 23, 22 years old. And I handled the complaints. I made the beds. I plunged the toilets at the middle of the night when you didn't have any rooms available. I kind of did everything that was needed on the weekends. And so I was the FTE as the manager, and all the other managers were off on the weekends. So I kind of got to cut my teeth in a lot of different departments for 2 years every weekend.
It sounds like you were the go-to MOD.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
In order to get in to see the GM, or, you had to get through me first. I was the first line of defense. And the GM had taught me, look, if a complaint gets to my desk, you didn't resolve it. You didn't do your job. So I had a good amount of autonomy to handle most everything, which I learned a lot.
That's great. Well, let's stay with you, Dave. So, you see the question, what's the future of the hospitality industry for grads? I mean, it's, as you sit in a classroom and you're ready to graduate and head into this industry that you've spent the last couple of years studying, and it just hit a buzzsaw. What's the advice that you give to the students that are listening and watching right now?
I think the best piece of advice, and it may sound cliche, but our industry has always been based off of personality, can-do attitude, and the ability to give. I've always given in our industry, and I think if that's your attitude, jobs may be less frequent out there right now, but we always hire for personality and can-do attitude. And I don't think that changes. If you have the ability to deliver exceptional customer service on a minute-to-minute basis, there's a spot for you in our industry. And I can tell you that pre-COVID, our industry, the travel industry, had been very healthy. And I would sadly admit that some of our standards on hiring had come down a bit because we just did not have the labor pool. So I think as you see a trajectory back, tourism is cyclical and it will come back, and you have to position yourself with the right company and the right mentor now. And even if that's at a position that may be less desirable than what you thought you were going to achieve 6 months ago, continue in a company that is strong, that has a good long-term future and can sustain this downturn, and you'll be successful. We need good people. This industry needs good people.
That's great advice, Dave. Thank you. Howard, what about you? What advice would you give?
Probably some similar advice. I wrote down a few things. I said, stay open-minded. Don't, as a student coming out of with a hospitality degree, you don't always have to be traditional. There's going to be a lot of acquisitions in the next few years with some of these hotels. Some of the businesses might not be profitable enough for them to even reopen. They might have done that analysis and said, look, we're a boutique hotel in South Beach. We can't make profit on 60 rooms. We're gonna close down and maybe just open the bars. So I'd say just keep an open mind and think non-traditional paths. Uber and Lyft, and there's companies like Open Table that are also they're always looking to hire great people with a college education. Expedia is one of the largest employers in this industry, and that's great experience to take with you to your next stepping stone. But you don't have to think what you're going to do right out of school is going to be with you and define you forever. Think if you're right for the industry, it's right for you.
I just had a friend who accepted a position as vice president of hospitality for a healthcare company. And probably 3 years ago, that wasn't on anybody's mind. But to your point about be open-minded and be prepared to pivot, hospitality has hit a crossroad between healthcare, education. These are segments of business that are looking towards hospitality as part of a benchmark, part of learning. And so, there's lots of opportunity if you get your head out of a traditional candidate hire scenario. So I think there's a lot of exciting things happening in the future for hospitality. So I agree with you. Darin, we'll give you the last word on advice for the students.
Sure. Totally agree with Howard and David. I think a lot of it has to do with passion and following your passion, and everything will fall into place. But, I think starting early, if you're a freshman, sophomore, one thing when I go to Lynn and speak to some of the intro to hospitality classes, I always tell them to start now. Don't wait until, you're a senior or until you graduate to think that you're going to become a manager right away. Start early and get your feet wet. And also, build your personal brand now. Get your LinkedIn page, get a professional headshot, start building your network, because you never know who you're going to run into, and you never know who could help you in the future. So you want to keep all those options open and keep an open mind. As everybody said, there's different areas of business that are opening, hospitality divisions, and lots of those sorts of things right now. So keep an open mind, follow your passion, and you'll be successful.
Great advice, Darin. Actually, great advice from all three of you. I want to thank you very much for those motivating words. To my friends at Lynn, I believe that we've got some questions. I'm going to turn it over to whoever is holding those questions, and if you don't mind directing it to who you think it should go to, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, first, before we get to questions, just a couple of housekeeping items. The first is that we obviously wanted to thank our 3 alumni panelists for joining us today. We know that this is an especially crazy time in the hospitality and tourism industry, so thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us. And of course, our fearless moderator, Bruce, thank you for being here. We couldn't have done it without you. Secondly, if anyone does have any questions and they didn't hear in the beginning of the webinar, any questions can be sent to through the chat box to the user questions@Lynn, and we'll be able to ask her questions to the panelists that way. So our first question is, how are organizations ensuring employee safety?
Well,
and whoever would like to answer that.
Well, I can start by saying that we are doing temperature checks when employees come in. We are providing employees with full PPE tools to be successful. And just like we expect in the building with our guests, we are also practicing social distancing, and we are doing welfare checks on individuals every day in our building, all of our employees. Now, we most of our hotels, unfortunately, have skeleton crews as of today, so we're really only talking about 10 full-time equivalents down to 3 in some hotels, but we are doing temperature checks on a daily basis. And PPE, everybody is required to wear a mask all throughout the building.
For us at Disney, same thing that David mentioned, temperature checks. Everyone has PPE, and anybody that's working in a corporate office building is working from home. So we're practicing social distancing just to keep everybody safe.
At Wynn Resorts, we actually put out a 23-page document of everything we're doing for sanitation measures, from things mentioned previously, from temperature checks, hand sanitizer everywhere you could possibly. I don't think we can walk 2 feet without being hit with a hand sanitizer dispenser. We've got PPE. They've also arranged for testing, because we still think that's part of it. So we're working with local universities to make sure that we can get any employee or guest that wants a test can take a test. And we have e-mist machines that are being sprayed in back of house. So they spray hydrogen peroxide. And then the biggest thing is I think up to 35% of our staff is now working from home. So that seems to be the biggest one for keeping us safe is working from home.
Bruce,
Great.
would you like to add?
I'm sorry?
Anything you'd like to add to that?
No, just that I think the interesting thing about the safety question is that the industry itself is setting standards. So American Hotel Lodging, U.S. Travel, as opposed to hotels trying to out-sanitize each other and trying to compete on that level, because you can't. So I think for the first time, the industry's setting the pace and being the voice of what safety in hospitality looks like. So that's a bit of a unique scenario right now.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is from Barbara Cambia, who would also like to thank you all for being here today. She is asking, do you plan on using more social media in your marketing efforts amid the COVID crisis?
Yes, yes, and yes, big time, and putting dollars towards it as well. So we actually just had a meeting this morning with our executive team about more social media deployment within the drive markets of some of these assets that have such good culinary and events downtown on a nightly basis, and events being now just sidewalk music, just some kind of normalcy for people to get in a car and come. And how do you put that on their device when they're looking at their phone? So the answer is yes, we're working on that aggressively.
Yeah, same for us. I think more, much more targeted strategic approach based on everything that's going on. So drive market, locals, etc.
I would also agree. I think that's a natural step right now to address people. I mean, when you're at home, people are on social media all day long now, and they're looking, they're not what, maybe you're limiting your TV and other areas of billboards and ad spend that you would have seen driving to work. Now you're on social media at home. So it makes logical sense that we would be advertising more.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next question is coming from someone who has more of an events background. I believe this is a student. They're asking, what are some ways to get more involved within the hospitality program, but with an events background?
Well, this isn't really my area of expertise, but one of the things I think you gotta step up and really commit yourself to being a lifelong learner. And I know that sounds very cliche, but you look at organizations that are event driven. Cvent is a company that has historically been in hospitality, and people rely on Cvent for one reason or another. And right now they have, complimentary certifications. So if I was a student, I would look at some of these organizations. I just did it myself. I went through a Cvent certification process for a hospitality professional. For your knowledge, guys, it's normally $350. That's a lot of money to anybody. And now it's free, and it's free through, the end of August. It's good if you're going to try to put yourself in through the event space to become certified in what event professionals know. And that's some of the organizations that, once you become Cvent certified, then you look for other organizations that are also offering something similar.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think any way to boost your resume, like Cvent certifications. If you want to be in events, I would definitely suggest to get your CMP certification, which is Certified Meeting Professional. Anything you could add to your title to show that you've gone the extra mile to add those certifications is always a good thing. And then I think looking for local companies, like I know Laura could probably tell you more. Aragon Events is based in Boca, and they do a ton of meetings and events. Renee Radaba is the owner, very nice lady. So I mean, you can probably call her and get some advice from her.
Yeah. The only thing I add, and I think Darin said it, is social media for yourself. We talk about what are we doing to create more revenue, top line revenue in the hotels. If you want to create a brand for yourself, it's through your own social media and through your own LinkedIn page. And, every time I come and speak at Lynn, that's the first thing I tell the students is you need a social media presence, the right social media presence, and the right LinkedIn page immediately. And I think that's how you break through some of this stuff. Because as you send an email or an inquiry, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to your LinkedIn page or your social media page and check you out. And it is somewhat disturbing sometimes to see what how off-brand, we call it off-brand. When you're off-brand, it doesn't play to your advantage.
Wonderful, thank you. Our next question is from an alum. Her name is Manella T. She works in the hospitality industry out of the Dominican Republic. So thank you, Manella, for attending. She asked the following question. How will this impact sustainability that hotels were targeting, like the use of plastic, reusing tools, et cetera, et cetera?
It's a great question. I don't think we really know. We're in survival mode right now, and we need any revenue that walks through the door, and we need to do it safely. So from a sustainability standpoint, that's been put on the back burner. We're using a lot of plastic cutlery every day, and we've put all the china up and away. So we don't know the impact, but the honest answer is we're fighting for survival today from a revenue management standpoint, from a top line revenue standpoint, and sustainability has been put on the back burner.
Same, I would think probably David, right, for food and beverage, sustainability with, some local farmers out, or you might source local products. You might have to look elsewhere now to get those products just to get through.
Yeah. We have a rooftop bar in Greenville that we were fortunate enough this past weekend to do at a 50% capacity, about 25,000 in revenue for about a 6-7 hour period on Saturday night. And we used all cutlery, all plastic. And we're thankful to have that business. And of course, that margin will be less because cutlery is more expensive than cleaning the chinaware. But, right now we desperately need the revenue.
Yeah, I mean,
into that rooftop restaurant, and it's one of my favorites in Greenville. So thank you for bringing it up. Our next question is, are there any opportunities now that COVID has hit that were not available or were not really an option prior to COVID? Are there any advantages to this crisis?
it's an interesting question. I think, generally what fascinates me is customers have become more concerned. Guests have become more concerned about sanitation practices and cleaning practices. And we spoke about this briefly. You don't want to compete against your neighbor on sanitation practices, but you do want to make it available and say what you are doing. You want to address the guest concerns and detail to them. It doesn't have to be in their face, but I think just like you sign terms and conditions, specifically for our business, we set up a separate website. It's just Encore Boston Info. And I think we have Encore Boston Harbor as the normal guest path. And you have Encore Boston Info, which is everything we're doing for that's COVID related. And anything that a guest has in addition to that, as in terms of questions, we're answering that. But we've seen a lot of guest concerns that were never addressed before. Right? What is your cleaning practice back of house? What are we talked about it briefly. How are we taking care of employees? What are they doing? And it's interesting because just like any other space, you have guests of all over the spectrum that don't care at all to I want to know how you're cleaning the blinds, and in a room. It's very, you got to address the guest concerns.
Would anyone else like to pitch in on that question?
I just go a different way, Laura, and say that the opportunity is we're going to become better operators on the other side of this. And we can already see that, and the efficiencies and the modeling. And we had some of that after 9/11. We had a lot of that at the recession and the meltdown in 09, 10. And you kind of then lose sight of it. But right now it's front and center. And the way we are going to do business moving forward from an infrastructure is going to significantly change.
Perfect, thank you. So this is our last question. Are there any particular certifications that stand out to an employer, such as ServSafe, HTMP, and Microsoft Suite, so on and so forth?
I think the more you have of that, the better. You know, again, going back to the personal branding, you want to showcase to the employer, you know, all the tools in your toolkit. So if you have your bachelor's degree, you get your master's degree, you have, you know, a couple certifications, you've done an internship here or there, all those are going to positively affect you. So I think the more, the better. And a lot of companies, you know, I got my CHSP, Certified Hospitality Sales Professional. When I worked for Hyatt, they paid for that. The CMEN certification, as Howard mentioned, is free right now. Normally it's $350. So a lot of these things you could do is continuing education through your employer, and they will cover the charge, which can't beat that.
I think the practical experience, the certification of, you know, a Marriott PMS system, a Hilton PMS system, anything to do with a major brand that you can go through and become certified as a team member right now is so critical. And I'm hiring interns right now, because when I say interns that want to work the front desk 3 days a week and get paid. The unemployment right now is a whole, which would take us down a whole nother rat hole, is we don't have a labor pool right now because everybody's out on unemployment and have not come back to work yet. So I do have some plugs in the hotels where I have students that are working 3 days a week for me, going through certifications, because we need some of those positions, and they're gaining some incredible knowledge working the front desk and getting certified on the systems. Practical experience is very important.
Yeah, I'd like to second that. You know, as somebody sitting down interviewing down the road, and I hear a story from a student that Dave just described, I've got lots of empathy towards work ethic, what kind of future this person's going to have, how hard they're going to work. I totally agree with that.
Great. Any last pieces of advice or words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
I'd like to underscore the brand recommendations that have come up a few times. I was fortunate enough to be invited back to my alma mater last February to speak. And out of about 400 students that I got to shake hands, say hello, whatever, I had one student come up to me and give me a business card. And nothing was on the business card except their name and their email address. And I have it, I still have it. But that student figured out how to break through the clutter and get shelf space and somebody that could have an impact on them getting a job at some point. So I would say, again, to underscore, you are a brand, and everything you do either adds or detracts from your brand equity. So whatever you think you can do to get it to where it needs to be, it'll have huge dividends for you down the road.
Well said. It's a time that you create opportunity, and when you're out there, you have to represent yourself. You know, we've had people come to Hilton and Marriott conferences that were students sitting outside the doors handing out their resumes as graduating seniors, because they knew that 1,000+ owners were going to be walking through the door of the Operaland or the Hilton Conference Center in Orlando. Think outside the box, be memorable. You know, that's what we tell the students. I feel like my career has been successful because I've had the ability to be memorable. Be memorable.
Absolutely. Again, going back to the personal brand, you know, how are you going to stand out in all the competition? There's thousands of kids graduating in the same position as probably a lot of people on this call. And what are you going to do to stand out and be different? And even in the job interview process, make sure that you ask a lot of questions. You come prepared, understand, you know, their business and their company, and be memorable. Write a handwritten thank you card, follow up, And that'll get you a long way.
Absolutely.
Eye contact and listening skills, 2 lost arts. Get good at them.
Absolutely. Sometimes we talk a lot,
Well,
but we don't listen enough. That's a
Thank
good
you
one,
all
Bruce.
again so much from our office, Career and Alumni Connections at Lynn University. We really appreciate you taking the time here today. And thank you to all of our audience members who listened in. We really appreciate your time as well. Thank you again and have a wonderful day, everyone.